Hey, welcome back to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. We are kicking off 2026 with a really special episode. We are talking the Matter of Time documentary all about EBRP and how we're going to kick its ass. Oh yeah, I said a potty word in the cold open. That's how excited I am about beating this disease. Here to talk with us about it is Matter of Time director Matt Finlin and the EBRP CEO Michael Hund. Let's do this thing.
What's up, everybody? Michael Hund here, CEO of EBRP.
Hi, my name is Matt Finlin. I'm the director of Matter of Time, and this is the State of Love and Trust.
The State of Love and Trust.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Paul. I'm excited. New year, new us.
New us. Lots to announce, lots to talk about, but we're going to prioritize the needs of others first. I think what better way to start off 2026 than with a worthy cause?
Absolutely. I teased it in one of the last episodes of 2025. We were meant to talk Matter of Time documentary with its director, Matt Finlin, and the EBRP CEO, Michael Hund. You know, schedules are a son of a gun, and once you know it, we couldn't figure it out. So we made it the priority. We made it the first thing to do in 2026, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm stoked.
As always, you know, there's plenty of links down below to support this show, be it through Patreon or the Pod Shop, but that is not as important as today's guests. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Michael Hund and Matt Finlin. This week's guests are leaders in furthering the awareness and advocacy for one of the most urgent and rare diseases right now, epidermolysis bullosa. Separately, their resumes are impressive. Together, their expertise has created the stunning and impactful new documentary, Matter of Time, focused on raising awareness and fighting for a cure for EB. Please welcome to the show the film's director, Matt Finlin, and CEO of EB Research and executive producer, Michael Hund.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Thanks, Jason and Paul.
We're thrilled to have you guys on, so thank you for making the time.
Hey, the honor's all our guys. Thanks for having us on.
Michael, you have been the CEO of EB Research Partnership since 2017, and you have helped to expand clinical trials from dose to 50 now? Is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
Good gravy. And you've fundraised, it's grown north of 75 million, if memory serves. What brought you to EBRP, that world, and why was it important for you to come on board?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, again, Jason and Paul, thank you guys, not only for this podcast, but you guys bring this community together and grow this community. So just thank you for what you guys do. The version of my story, I grew up in a cattle ranch in a 200-person town in rural Kansas, right? And so what brought me to East Coast America, if you remember, there was a late, great actor, philanthropist, race car driver, entrepreneur named Paul Newman. And he and his wife, Joanne Woodward, had a camp for children with serious illness called the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp after, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. His mission was really, if you are a child who's diagnosed with cancer, sickle cell, HIV, I didn't know what EB was at the time, unfortunately, you kind of get robbed of those things that we all remember about our childhood, riding a horse, climbing a tower, doing all those fun things that kids do. You might spend 200 days out of the year in a hospital. So his concept, in his own words, is we need to make a place where kids can go raise a little hell and have fun and be medically supported. So when I was 18 years old, I got in my beat up Chevy S10 pickup truck and I drove from Kansas to Connecticut and I volunteered, and that started a journey of 10 years, eventually getting hired by Mr. Newman and he and his wife, and, working on the program side, going into hospitals throughout the Northeast. It was a free camp. So working with doctors, social workers, nurses, to get as many kids as possible to come and do this. And we evolved that into year-round programming and programming in hospitals. The part of that role, that really had an impact on me was unfortunately the loss of life of young people and the impact that had on, yes, of course, their families, but the broader community, their schools, their teachers, their healthcare providers. And I've always kind of been wired to be a problem solver. And let's do something about this. So I got interested in medical research. How can we solve things? How can we get treatments, to these much deserving families? So I went into medical research and went to business school, kind of thinking about, nonprofit work is so important and missions are so important. I'm a big believer though, and running it like a business. If you want your phone to work well, or your computer, or your car, or your house, you go and look at who are the best business leaders. We want to cure a disease, right? And so that warrants innovative, really sophisticated business models. So spent a lot of time thinking about that. Met Jill and Eddie in 2017, and the foundation was just one staff member. They were kind of looking to grow it and bring some professionalization, into the organization. And it's been a wild ride ever since. We went from 2 clinical trials to 50 or doses. You say, Jason, you're well researched and well studied. We went from no approved treatments to 3 in the last 2 years. We went from a couple $1 million raised to $80 million raised, growing the team, growing the staff. We met people like the amazing Matt Finlin along the way to bring their talents and gifts of art. We met people like you guys along the way. So, in short, we're at this real inflection point, right? And if you think about EB, as you've described it, it's 1 in 10,000 rare diseases. There's 400 million people on the planet with a rare disease, 1 in 10 people affected by a rare disease, but 95% don't have any approved treatments. We've done it 3 times in the last 2 years. And like I said, these are milestones, but we won't be done until we actually cure the disease once and for all.
Guys, I work in education, and I'm just having been part of capital campaigns and real sincere efforts to try and raise funding for children and their needs. Obviously, the education sector is very different than what you're doing, but 75 million is a staggering number, and that's something, number one, that you should both be incredibly proud of. It warms me to even say that you've raised that much money, because it's such a beautiful cause, and it's wonderful to see how much generosity has been dedicated to it. I want to talk for a minute a little bit about how to accelerate science to find treatments and eventually the cure, because achieving these things, as you know, probably everyone listening and watching as well, it's not cheap, right? So there are a lot of other disease research initiatives that take a lot longer. So I want you to unpack this term, venture philanthropy, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, first of all, you talk about that fundraising number, and you guys have experience, but how do we get there? I mean, it's you guys, it's the community that listens to this podcast. It's people that are fans of, Eddie and the band, and, thinking outside the box, right? Traditional fundraising, we're not let's go to a gala, put on the suit and tie, raise that paddle, and everybody's on to the next one. We're about community building and team building. And you guys know, I mean, Jason, being in Los Angeles, you met these families, right? And once you meet an individual living with EB, I mean, your world has changed. You want to do everything within your power, your God-given gifts and talents and skills to rally around this. And I think that's what's made us really unique and innovative. We have the filmmakers like Matt Finlin. We have musicians and activists like Jill and Eddie and their families. We've got business leaders, lawyers. We got, podcasters and media experts, and diversity is the most beautiful thing about innovation, right? You put all those people into a gumbo and mix it up, and great things can happen. To your point, Paul, what is venture philanthropy? Quite simply put, most medical research organizations write checks and just hope for the best, right? This kind of comes under that banner of how can we run this nonprofit like a business? So what we decided with venture philanthropy is every single penny that we put out the door has an equity upside, a commercial upside. So, if that science is commercialized, then the returns come back to the foundation to fund more research until we cure the disease. And what's really innovative, about that is, we're not a business with shareholders, but we do have shareholders, and our shareholders are patients and families. So,
right.
Why should pharma companies go make millions of dollars and the community doesn't directly benefit that to create this flywheel cycle to reinvest it and create sustainable philanthropy? So, the other part of that is when somebody gives us $1, we can turn that into $6 or $10. And if you look at, 2 of those 3 FDA approvals, the two that are gene therapies. I mean, we were early investors in those, right? That generated multiples of the community's original investment that led to those 50 clinical trials today, because we were able to invest in that. And, the last thing I'll say, because I could talk about it way too long, with venture philanthropy, is it solves a problem. In medical research and science, you got all these brilliant researchers and people that you guys learned about. The Dr. Jean Tangs and the Dr. Tony Oros and Anya Bilasovas and this global team around the world. The challenges, well, there are lots of challenges today, more than ever in scientific funding, but historically that challenge is, how do you get science from a bench in a lab to the bedside of a patient? That we call that in medicine the valley of death, right? Most science never makes it over that big hump. Yeah. So with our capital, we can overcome that valley of death and get it into clinical trials and into the hands of patients.
Matt, I want to talk about storytelling, because there is, I think in my opinion, it's probably the most powerful way to engage people to donate money so that you guys can turn it into $6 or $7, right? And it's why I think you see it, unfortunately, sometimes used in nefarious ways in politics, pressing on people's kind of fears to act a certain way. Whereas Matter of Time, for me, is the antithesis to that. So can you talk about the direction of choosing to follow a few patients and kind of weaving that into Ed's 2023 benefit show at Benaroya, maybe like your production timeline for the film?
Yeah, I think it was really important for us that when people walk away from this film, that they feel what you're saying, that this is, we're feeding the hope machine. We aren't, we're showing a community that is coming together. Like Michael said, and he does so well, is like, this isn't a community that's crying out to be saved. They're saving themselves. And whether you're an artist like Ed, like business leaders, like Michael said, or rock star, there's so many rock stars in this film, there's rock star scientists and
Dr.
kids
Tang.
and families. Dr.
Tang, man.
Hodges.
That's right.
Hodges.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And so that was really inspiring to me as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, like how this is a story in the world where we're seemingly have unsolvable problems. Like, look at what this organization and this group of people are doing to tangibly cure this disease. And I think Ed says in the movie, like, it's not false hope, it's happening. And when we started the film, there was one FDA approved treatment. You see in the film Rowan Haller being treated with the first FDA approved treatment, which was just several months prior. And by the time we finished and premiered at Tribeca, there were 3, which was amazing.
That's fast.
Yeah. And to answer your question about choosing who to follow and how this story unfolded, we've been so lucky. There's some, whatever you may believe, but there's some magic in this community. I will say I used to produce a television show called We Day, and it was a youth empowerment show talking about young kids and families doing good things across America. And one of the stories we found was this little boy, Eli Meyer, who you see in the film. And I had never heard of epidermolysis bullosa. I certainly had no idea there was a connection at the time between the disease and what the Vedders had recently started with a group of families. And like Michael said, once you meet someone with EB, you'll just do whatever you can to help. So after we included Eli on the show, and I reached out to Jill and Ed and Michael, and we kind of hit it off. And ever since then, we've just kind of been telling stories together, using our gift, or hopefully gift, to help raise awareness and funds. And so we've met a lot of families and patients along the way that, has been like, feel very grateful to have a huge impact on my life. And so it was just this natural sort of, coalescing of who was in the film. It just kind of happened organically over that time.
But Matt, you make it sound easy, right? But I mean, like, so the storytelling and filmmaking, these are not easy ventures, especially when the outcome's on the line, right? When you have an outcome that's on the line, when you think of like Hollywood film budgets, and like documentaries in the latter usually have much smaller margins. So can you guys both discuss, I guess, the challenges in producing the film while making sure that the message and the stories were clear and impactful? Because that balance is so delicate. And that's where oftentimes films get lost in the weeds. And when the outcome here is tied.
Yeah. Well, the word is balance. And every decision we made, as a director, producers, Ed and Jill, the families, that we were honoring these patient stories and researchers at every step. And so I think the big challenge from my perspective was making sure we got that right. So if we leave the theater, if these families and patients leave the theater feeling that their story's been honored and we're doing a service to the greater rare disease community, not only EB, then that's huge success.
Yeah.
So the challenge was making sure that we showed people who had no idea about EB what the disease was without being gratuitous, understanding, showing the challenges, but also showing the hope and the impact that Michael speaks to so eloquently. Like what this organization has done, like it is a small but mighty, mighty team that, and again, as a storyteller, I wanted to make sure that came through because there's a lack of that in the world, I think, today, of showing like what people can do when they come together to actually solve these problems. So that was the trick. How do we make sure there's a balance of showing what the challenges are, but really showing what the hope is?
It's almost like we take, sorry to cut you off there. It's almost like we take success for granted. Like, well, you're applying yourselves to get success. And if you get it, well, that was what we meant to do. So people just kind of think, okay, well, you got what you meant to do. But that should be celebrated because this is a hard thing to do. Hard things that are achieved should be celebrated. And, to your point with storytelling and documentaries, with this one especially, like how did you're balancing, their stories and you're balancing the hope side of it as well. But there's also the call to action as well. There's a third leg to this stool. So how did you balance adding that leg to the stool when you're telling stories that are, man, like I told you, Michael, my wife, every time I looked over to her, she's bawling. And I'm like, yeah, this is so heavy. But then there's moments where like, oh man, these kids are just unreal. So you've got like these three posts that you've got to try and balance. How did you think about the call to action as well?
What I can say is I don't think we necessarily thought of it in a strategic way other than like you describe your wife's experience, that success, because hopefully someone like her or someone watching in the theater
is moved to contribute, right?
In their way. Exactly. Yeah. Whether that's financially or telling someone else simply about the disease or, maybe starting their own fundraiser, like a lemonade stand with their kids, like all these little things build into this bigger movement, which EB Research Partnership has done so well. So again, I know this sounds like a lot of these things become strategic in a lot of like content movies, but it's not. And that's what I like hold so dearly to this community, is because it is organic. And, it makes me feel great to hear like that was your wife's experience, because hopefully we inspired that call to action, whatever that action may be.
Yeah. And, look, guys, the name of this podcast is State of Love and Trust. And that's what this was, right? I mean, this community loves the collective force that it's built. These researchers love these patients and these patients love these doctors, and they all love the supporters of this, and we all love the music, right? And the trust side of that was, a little inside baseball, and Matt, apologize if I'm sharing this with the world, but, October 2023, we didn't know we were making a documentary, right? We knew there was something incredibly powerful going on, that there was this concert by Eddie, that there was this summit, that there was this gathering of the community, that we just saw the first FDA approval, and that we were on the precipice of more to come. And we had the trust in Matt and his team, as did the families, like, we need to start to document this and see if there's some there and see if something comes from this. So, and then the call to action piece, to your point, Jason, I mean, we've talked about that. I remember the Kennedy put someone on the moon, right? That it's going to take the best of our skills and our times and our talent and energy. And we hope what comes through is the authentic truth in reality, that there's so many important causes in this world that deserve all of our energy. Yeah. But look, here's one that we can achieve not only in our lifetime, but in the next few years, and we're delivering on that. So, that contrast, I think, of the devastating nature of what those with EB battle, with the hey guys, we can do something about this, right? Join this team, get involved, be part of this. We're here to welcome you with open arms.
I want to get into the technicality, the art of the film for a second, right? So let's talk for a minute about the level of detail and how shots are framed, the mise en scène, if you will, huh?
Sure.
So just in terms of like what to focus on, like different angles make you feel like you're in the room with a family. And it's hard to kind of get through large portions of the film without succumbing to tears, as Jason's wife discovered. But there's also
I may have
that's true.
It was dusty in that Chinese theater.
But this is the key here. There's also incredible moments of simple joy from these kids. So, like for example, Rowan pointing out that the seal of the Seattle Aquarium has big eyes like your dog, like little things that remind you that these kids are not beaten. You know what I mean? That they're full of life, and they're not going to let this disease dominate their attention and the fabric of their being. So, you know, Jason mentioned balance before in regards to stating facts versus a call to action. How do you approach the balance between showing the hardship with resilience?
Yeah, it all came down to trust. And as someone who held a camera and was in a lot of those, you know, spaces operating and sitting in those rooms, you know, when you see Rowan in Seattle getting a bandage change, receiving that FDA approved treatment, that was 6 hours. And so that was, you know, I experienced that once, you know, not every other day. And I think it was important to me as a filmmaker. I love documentaries who, you know, it's more verite. You're sitting with the person and getting to feel them in their real life versus them just talking to you. And I hope we achieve that in a lot of manners. And, you know, using that example that you brought up, which gives me chills still. I've seen the movie 1,000 times, but in the, you know, when Ed's performing Just Breathe and you see the family being a family, they're at the aquarium, Rowan's having just the best time. And I believe Kate Haller, Rowan's mom, just says, this is just so nice to be a family right now. And so those moments, I hope, came through. And then, you know, when you talk about the other more challenging aspects, who is just such a legend, this young man, Garrett, who is, you see at Stanford University and who is really giving of himself to research, you know, because that, you know, as Gene says in the film, that research may not benefit him, but it will others. And that process was extremely painful. And so that was a choice of ours to be, and thankfully he was so gracious and courageous to allow us in the room while that was happening. But then on our end, making sure that we're making the correct decision to only show what we need to show to communicate what's happening, which is 10 times worse than what you see on the film.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's got to be so challenging in an edit, not only from like hey, I've got 6 hours, I got to pare it down to about 8 minutes. That's one challenge, but like the emotional challenge in not going too far with it, because I was talking about before with how emotions can really drive people. You want to strike that balance and really the trust that you have with the family to do it right. And I just found that scene, especially with Garrett, and just the fact that he was so selfless when he had every right to be selfish about living his life in some capacity. And he was like,
I don't need this camera crew right now, you know? And he was just, 5 minutes later, and it's sort of, you see it a little bit in the film, but he, after going through a very, very excruciating experience that, you know, would have had me laid up for a week to recover from, he's talking about, you know, enjoying playing basketball as a kid and like just shooting the breeze. And it's
the mental strength is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
But the wisdom, I think too, you know, these young people have gone through more in 15 years, 20 years than all of us collectively will go through in our lifetime. Right. And, you know, you said it, we talk about a lot, Jason, selflessness. You know, if you believe in sainthood, if you believe in, you know, the supreme embodiment of selflessness, that you will put yourself through that level of excruciating pain to help another, to help the next generation, you know, and you think about in the film, when you have Deanna, and God bless Deanna, sitting with Rowan, you know, and they're doing their makeup together, getting ready for the show. You know, that moment to me, Matt, is one of the most powerful moments in the film, because there's this generational component that's being conveyed of, these are two women that were dealt the same hand at birth with the same gene, the same rare disease, and that wisdom of Deanna to sort of look over and look out and guide Rowan, but also that you take that up to the landscape of there's two very different outcomes of what we've been able to change over the years, whether it's therapeutic or treatments or, just even just the awareness. So it's really powerful. And, that's credit to Matt, the trust that we have in him. I mean, we've worked together now for 7 years. He is a member of this community, but kind of to your point, Jason and Paul, I think what Matt achieved incredibly well, what we all talked about a lot, is we want people to lean in. We don't want people to turn away. Right. And that's a delicate balance. But again, we hope that was achieved here.
Yeah.
I think for one thing, like I walked away feeling humble and grateful.
Yeah.
And so it's that combination that made me like really like thinking as I'm walking through the parking garage back to my car, like what am I gotta like, do I have to refocus my priorities in life? Like I started having these big life questions of myself, like what the hell am I doing? And like, how can we on this show, like do something greater than just talk about, a sick guitar riff? Like there's gotta be a little bit more to this. And so I'm glad that I was able to see it late in 25 and then we had this break before we started here in 2026. And now I'm like, Paul and I are laser focused, but I got one more for you. And I know you mentioned, obviously the goal is to cure this thing by the end of 2030. And that is 4 years from now, not just 5, 4 years from now. And in the film, I learned that scientists they've narrowed this EB thing down to a single gene mutation. And if we solve that, it's almost like a skeleton key in a sense for all those other rare diseases that you mentioned. And Jill intimated that as much. Michael, can you explain where we're at when it comes to finding that skeleton key? I know the film has been out, but the filming was a couple years ago. So how much further down the road are we?
Yeah, well, I mean, just a quick where we've been. We've talked about a lot of the stats, but one we haven't talked about, of those 400 million people on the planet with a rare disease, 0.08 have 3 or more treatment approvals, right? So to say we're unprecedented and ahead of the curve would be a momentous understatement. Right. How do we get to the finish line and unlock that key? A big part of what we do every single day is scour the earth for the most innovative science on the planet. When I started, we were looking for stuff 5 or 6 years away from the clinic, which means actually in patients. Now we're funding stuff in the clinic. And on average, these things are a year away from the clinic. Maybe some hot off the press news for you guys, what gives us hope, of all the devastating and challenges that come with EB, the ray of light is this one gene mutation. And if you look around us in the world of medicine, we are in a revolution of medicine full stop, but particularly gene therapy and gene editing, right? So if you're trying to solve an incredibly complex problem, you start with the single cell, the single gene mutations, right? And so what's happened in the last year, we have really, curative and definitive treatments for sickle cell. Sickle cell is a monogenic disease. Worldwide news last summer, baby KJ, monogenic rare neurological disorder that was cured in a year and a half, by compassionate use protocols, working along with the FDA. Right now, what gives us hope is we're about to announce we just greenlit funding for a project working with not one, but 2 Nobel laureates responsible for the inventing of gene editing. And shout out to Dr. Jennifer Doudna, who's amazing. Walter Isaacson did a biography on her that's fantastic. But this is soon to be announced, and we're pushing and we're fighting and we're changing. What we learned from COVID is, hey, guess what, world? If we want to run clinical trials really fast, we can do it. We can do it safely. there's types of EB, one called junctional EB, and in severe forms, these young people don't make it past their first birthday. So we don't have time for 5 to 7 years for a clinical trial. So, but we now have methods of doing that have been done in a couple other diseases. So we went out and found those brilliant, amazing scientists in collaboration with people like Dr. Jean Tang and Dr. Tony Oro, and really throwing all of our might of this diversified portfolio approach, and that's the other powerful thing about the science side of this. I won't go too deep into it, but this is a organization that, yes, we're funding gene editing and gene therapy, but we're funding immune therapies and antibody therapies. We're funding AI and machine learning, right? So all of these components, we don't know what's going to get us across the finish line, but we do know the best chance of doing that is supporting as much of it as possible and finding the most brilliant people on the planet to work with us in that endeavor.
It's a special endeavor, I tell you. I mean, my wife was a professional dancer, and it took a toll on her body, and to the point where she had like no cartilage in one of her knees, and it was just bone on bone. And there were times where it would buckle, and she was carrying my son, and I was worried one day she was going to go down with him. And she was fortunate enough to be part of a study down here in San Diego for gene replacement therapy. And the ability to completely alter genetics in a way where, and this is about saving a knee. I mean, you guys are saving lives. You know what I mean? That's what you're doing here. But I've seen firsthand the impact that something like that can have. She feels like she has a new lease on life, which is just a limb. You know what I mean? Let alone the ability to live and to live comfortably. And so this really resonates with me. Obviously, what I experienced is minuscule on the scale of what you guys are doing, but it just speaks to the age in which we're living in, and the scope and the sequence that has to be followed for us to get where we really need to go, and the commitment and the contributions necessary to achieve that end. So again, incredibly grateful and very proud to be a part of the community, but more importantly, also grateful for the opportunity in front of me and in front of us to do something this powerful and profound.
Well, Paul, we're grateful for you guys, right? Because the story is only as good as those that can tell it. So it can be, Ed from the stage, it can be Matt in film, but it's exactly what you guys are doing. And, that scale piece that you mentioned, Jason, you go from one gene to multiple genes and thousands of genes. So not only do we, and are we, in one quick stat, we ask scientists, can this science scale into other diseases? Is it applicable? And when I started 8 years ago, it was maybe 20% said yes. For the first time last year, it was 100%, so the facts are there. And so that cure one, cure them all is real. And the last thing I would sort of say about it is, to your point, Paul, about the honor to be able to build this community, my first boss, Paul Newman, said that the goal of life is to be like the farmer, to put back and more into the soil than we take from it, and that's what Ed's doing. That's what Jill's doing. I think that's what we're all trying to do. And the great Muhammad Ali said that the rent we pay here on earth is the service that we give, right? And so any way that you can do that and contribute it, none of us on this call are scientists, but we can do everything within our power to make people aware with shows like this, to show films what Matt's done. So that's our hope, right? That people will join the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't thank you guys enough for illuminating us on how this was made, because I think it's so important. And whenever there's something that I watch that's really, really good, I'm like, well, I need more of it. And I know you guys are set to start streaming this, so everybody who hasn't been able to go to a theater to see it will see it. And I'm hoping that's going to be soon. Do you also, while you answer that question, will you also think about, because the timeline, like I said, is 4 to 5 years where we think we can knock this thing out. Do we plan to keep on checking in, Matt, and maybe do a follow-up down the line to like bookend, fingers crossed, this thing?
I think so. This is how this community has worked since I have been privileged enough to be part of it. And that's, like Michael said, 6 years. And if we look, sometimes we'll look back and see what has been done, and it's unbelievable. So yeah, the answer is yes. Yeah, let's check in again and see where we're at.
We've commissioned Matt for the documentary First one's Matter of Time. The next one's just called Cured.
Yeah.
I love it. And now we got to convince Ed to convince the fellows to do like a 5-run residency in Seattle and just all the ticket sales. Like we just knock it out, baby.
That's what it takes. If that's what it takes.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on here, like I said, and to kick off 2026 for us in this little dog and pony show, as I always say, in the right manner, because as Paul and I have been saying here, this is a year after a year that felt like a decade to turn this ship around, and why not do it with some good juju with you fellas who are really doing some fantastic and have done some fantastic work on this EB thing. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Once again, thank you to Michael and Matt for making the time and to help us kick off 2026 the right way, Paul.
I could not have asked for better guests. Really, really enjoyed this conversation. Like I said before, happy to be a part of a community with such a profound and powerful, ambitious endeavor in front of it. And look, there's a long road ahead, but I think that we are well on our way along it. And now is the time to push the pedals of the metal and plow forward.
I love that. And what was the phrase that Matt used that I want to steal?
Well, we like to say feed that algorithm, right? and we're going to continue to say feed that algorithm, but along the way, we're going to not only ask you to feed that algorithm, but we want you to feed that hope machine with it. How about that?
And I joked in the middle of the episode that was going to be my personal and podcast mantra for 2026. But it's real, Paul, because we've thought about this show. We've been doing it for almost 6 years now, which is crazy to think about. And we feel like there is more. There is more to talk about. The way that these Pearl Jam songs make us feel, we feel them in other bands. We feel them in other art like photography. We've spoken to photographers. We've spoken to filmmakers. And we've spoken to activists, people like Michael and Matt trying to do the good work. And it made us think about what is the purpose of us, right? Can we expand on how the music and all the art makes us feel and go backwards in time to more people who did this, to go, who are the contemporaries of Pearl Jam? Who's standing on their shoulders, now rocking out and doing the good fight? And what does that all make us feel? How can we go outwards and upwards and all the axes? And I think that's the road to travel, is it not?
It is, Jason. For 6 years, we have really concentrated everything we do here around this idea of what do fans of Pearl Jam want to hear. And I think we've worked really hard to deliver that. But along the way, we've had the pleasure of watching this band that we love grow so much. And I think it's inspired us along the way to continue growing as well, to the point where we've kind of graduated to a larger question, which is, what do fans of music want to understand? And I think that's a more salient question to ask. And that's the leap that we want to take. So what we're really saying is we're living in this world that's very, very fast paced. It's ever changing, as we know. And if you love music, if you love art, you're seeking a deeper sense of connection. You want deeper meaning. You want an emotional refuge. And we're living in a global climate, quite frankly, that it's just rife with political unrest. There's societal shifts. There's environmental crises that we're inundated with. There are personal challenges that we face on a daily basis. All that can make the world feel like you're in the eye of a hurricane. Chaotic, it's overwhelming. And I think for everybody, music and art offer a way to help us navigate these complexities, and it provides us with layers of understanding and comfort. And that emotional expression and healing that's found in art, that is a form of catharsis. It's a way to help us understand and feel a lot less isolated in what can feel like a very turbulent time that we're living in. And I think it is a turbulent time that we're living in. So understanding and identity and belonging, this transformation, connection, community, hope, resilience, a search for meaning in this rapidly changing world, we're looking for authenticity and truth. And that is the state of love and trust. And that, I think, is what we're going to seek to bring in 2026.
And Michael said it a few times in the interview there. It's about community. We've talked about this many times on this show, that this show is part of a larger, music Pearl Jam focused community. There's been a sub community formed with our listeners and on the Patreon side as well. And I think it now looks outwards and say, what's the broader community trying to achieve? Because without community, and you see it across this country right now, people trying to bond together to feed that hope machine in some kind of way by also fighting off, I always bring up Seinfeld references, but you talk about, Kramer fighting off the mugger while he's driving the bus, making this, you made all the stops. Yeah, I made those, like trying to do two things at once. And I think, I want to be, if we can call ourselves some sort of spotlights or beacons, Paul, I don't know that we really can, but maybe we'll try to be, in this community, to shine the light. If I can quote Eddie Vedder, shine the light even farther out and farther backwards and forwards, and say, what else makes us feel that way? And why do we feel that way? And maybe we can bring more people under the tent to feel like we're all feeding the hope machine in some way. And if that's talking about bands from the 70s, it's talking about bands from the 2000s, it's talking about photographers from the 80s, whatever it is, activists from the 90s, whatever it is, if it helps us understand why we feel the way we do, or answer some questions, I'm interested.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, we may not be the light, but we can certainly be conduits that help it shine farther. You know what I mean?
And share it.
Yeah.
Again, if I can quote Eddie. Guys, thank you. I'm really excited right now. I don't know if you can tell. I'm kind of buzzing out of my chair about what's to come this year for the State of Love and Trust. And I'm just thanking all of you for allowing us to spend, 30 to 60 minutes a week talking about this kind of stuff. So as we always say, if you're watching here on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, why don't you, and hit that bell for notifications. And if you're listening only, Paul, what should they do?
Well, you're going to rate, you're going to review, and hopefully you're going to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm and feed that hope machine while you're at it.
Absolutely. We will see you next week with another new episode. And until then, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.